Sorry, that's right. The recording is happening now. So yeah. So this is completely defies all the conception that we have about architecture rising up. This is actually going down, and the stepwells are just as elaborate going down as any palace or temple or monument could be going up. And of course, they went down. The stepwells were constructed going into the earth because the main thing was the search for water. As we know, civilizations sprung up around water, and when the rivers started drying up, there was a need to access water, and the water management systems got more and more sophisticated. In this part of India, which is Gujarat, the top half of India, they got so sophisticated, and yet they are hiding in plain sight. So that's going to be the kind of the topic of our talk today. So just to kind of situate you into this, because I remember when I first came to this, which was about 13 years ago, and my mentor for this tour, who is Arti Chandaria, she said to me, she said, well, we've got to include Rani Ki Vav, which is the Queen Stepwell. We're going to Gujarat, we're going to Patan, we have to include that. And I said, well, is it a stepwell? What is a stepwell? I'm Gujarati. I grew up more or less, in and out of Gujarat. And I didn't know, I'd never heard of stepwells. And she said, oh, you're in for a treat. And I said, so what is it? She said, it's a monument, but it's even better than the Taj Mahal. And I thought, okay. So anyway, as we approach, this is what you would see. Where's the stepwell? What's this monument you're talking about? And then as we approach, all you're seeing is, kind of scrub depending on the weather. And as you come here, and then when you're looking down, it just is, you cannot even imagine what you're going to see. So there's that surprise element with stepwells. And this is another stepwell, a very small, intimate one. So I just included this photograph here to show you what it would look like on the outside. You're not even aware of something, like what's going on here. So this is, say you come here to this point here, what are you going to see? Well, you're going to see this. You're going to see a spectacular structure that is descending 7 stories into the earth. And it is about, there's about 600 sculptures, and it's 200 feet long, all right, over 60 feet wide, and 90 feet or 7 stories down. And this would be the well shaft, which would go all the way down. And when you're standing here, you're going to descend using these steps all the way down. And then keep in mind these kind of pavilions, these kind of platforms that formed a very important, had a very important purpose. Not only were they buttressing the enormous weight of the earth that wanted to cave in, but they also had another purpose, which I'll get to in a while. And this particular stepwell, incredibly, was buried for over 800 years. It was made in the 11th century. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. It's called the Queen Stepwell. It really is the queen of stepwells. It's in Patan, which is the home of Double Ikat Patan Patola. And this is what you'd see. So when I saw this for the first time, I could not believe my eyes. Of course, as you kept descending further down, I again, like, it was a surreal sense of leaving everything that was happening up in the surface, the heat, the noise, the dust, everything, the cacophony of India, and descending into this hushed, cool, space where there's water down there. You're and everywhere you look, it's beautiful. It's beautifully carved pillars. It was just this kind of a complete. It kind of upended everything that I'd ever known about monuments, which I've always been to, and they're top up. And just to give you an idea of how beautifully and intricately carved some of these figures are, this is carved in stone, but you can see that the necklace is falling off the breast of this sculpture here, and yet you can put your hand behind there. Now, of course, you can't touch these things, but you could actually just see how beautifully they're carved. This person here is of Asian origin, and he is holding. Apparently, she is pregnant, and he's holding one of those horns that they used to use before the ultrasound was introduced. They still use that. Midwives still use that, and he's holding that horn to listen to what's happening in her womb. So I mean, each one of these sculptures, like we could have a separate lecture on Rani Ki Vav, completely separate lecture, because the iconography, it defies anything that I've ever seen, and anything that you would probably see either. So this stepwell was built in the 11th century. Like I said, it's UNESCO certified, and it was built by Queen. It was commissioned rather by Queen Udayamati to honor her dead husband. It was built for 20 years. She had it built. It was silted over, as I said, for 800 years until the British found it. And then the ASI, which is the Archaeological Survey of India, excavated it in the 1940s and 50s, and then again in the 80s. And it has 600 sculptures, columns, no two are alike. So this is the pinnacle of stepwells. Okay, let's move on. The other thing that struck me when I was in the stepwell was these patterns, these kind of friezes of patterns that had remarkable similarity to the double ikat pattern patola. Um, of course, they must have exchanged design books or design notes, because how else would you have this synchronicity? I mean, it was again, everywhere you looked, there was something to do with textiles, and of course, you should remember that these were textile trade routes. The Silk Route passed through this for much of the year when the northern bit of India was snowed under, through Ladakh and the Himalayas. So then the Silk Route would actually go through Gujarat, and because of Gujarat having the longest coastline, this area was very rich in trade. And most of the trade actually consisted of textiles. So, and part of the reason for having these stepwells where they are is to promote trade. So let's look at a line drawing. First of all, let's look at a layout of a typical stepwell. So this would be what you've been looking at. So here's the well shaft. They would dig that first, dig that down. And then here you see this is where I showed, this is where somebody would enter. This is a Nanda style of stepwell with only the one entrance. And you would go down, and these are all pillars. You would go down these steps. Again, there's again another set of, like, another platform with pillars, keep on descending. And during the monsoon, the water would rise all the way up till here, and it would be easier for people to access the water. In the drier season, they would have to go a little bit further down. And here's a cross section of the well. So this would have been dug first, and then all the others, the other layers added. Of course, it required massive buttressing. You can imagine, with the arches and the pillars and the platforms and the pavilions and so on. And just because the earth was trying to cave in, and at some point, the river that was feeding this actually dried out, and so it was actually abandoned. It was silted over, and then somebody found some, like this pillar that was poking out of there. So incredibly, this was lost for about 800 years. Nobody knew about it, much like something like Angkor Wat. All right, so we'll go on from there. I wanted Nirav Bhai to tell you about his connection. Unfortunately, as I said, we're still hoping that he'll join us in a little bit. Nirav Bhai, Nirav Panchal, is our textile expert and group leader for this tour. At 6 or 7 years old, he was taken to stepwells around Ahmedabad, of which there are close to I'd say hundreds of stepwells around Ahmedabad, which is where he's born. And this is his playground. This is where he was playing hide and seek. And, and his grandfather took him here to explore stepwells. I mean, that was their thing. And so from that time, he has just had such a passion for stepwells. And then he collaborated with research scholars Morna Livingston, Victoria Lautman, and he was the go-to person for these scholars to anytime they wanted any research done, new stepwells coming to the fore, it would be Nirav Bhai who would take them. Okay, so let's have a look at some prominent, let's look at the map of India. Now, this doesn't even touch upon the number of stepwells that are in India, but these are the ones that are documented and being reclaimed and also quite prominent. So you can see that across the whole part of India, here's Gujarat here, and this is Rajasthan, which has the largest concentration just because of it's so arid. And when the monsoon comes, it's very capricious. The weather here in India is very capricious. Is when the water comes, there's a lot of it, and when the water stops, there's nothing. So it's a very arid area. This is the Thar Desert, and it kind of extends into Pakistan as well. But this is the Thar Desert, and so then the stepwells actually started around the Indus Valley civilization in this area. That is where the blueprint for stepwells and water reservoirs were in the Harappan site of Dholavira, which is going to be on this tour, and then slowly they spread across the breadth of India. In different forms. So here in Gujarat, they're called VAVs, VAV, which means well, actually, a step well, it's called a vav. Here in Rajasthan, they're called Bauris, Baoris, Bauris. And so they might be known by different names and they might have different architectural features. And then again, here you see a concentration in Maharashtra here because this was a base for the Buddhists. And Ashoka, in one of his edicts, also said that there must be some source of water for the pilgrims and the traveling monks, as well as traders every 8 kilometers. So when you look at a satellite image of where the stepwells are, where, when you start mapping them out, they're roughly between 8 to 10 to sometimes 20 kilometers, but that would have been the maximum that livestock or people could travel in a day before they would need water. So it's very interesting, the whole mapping of stepwells, and then we'll zero in, of course, in the prominent stepwells in Gujarat. There's about 700 of them, but we've got some major ones here. There's also, it's called the stepwellatlas.com. Nirav Bhai has been very prominent, and he's been very active in populating the Stepwell Atlas. So if you want to look at stepwellatlas.com, you can see the number of stepwells that he has brought to light with help, obviously, from local communities. So let's look at a broad classification of stepwells. First of all, I mean, if you've got thousands of them, what is it? How can we break this down? So some of them could be according to the topology. So you're looking at either the open ones, they're like huge open, like almost like reservoirs or tanks. Then you have the closed ones, which are just the well shaft, and there might be one entrance, and then it's all closed. So you're just going down and down and down. And then you're looking at the shape, which could be octagonal, which is, if you remember the slide earlier where I said this is where Nirav Bhai kind of began when he was 6 or 7. It was octagonal. Those could be octagonal. There's round, there's rectangular, which are more kind of tank-like and more kind of more like kund or baulis, more in Rajasthan. And then you have the L-shaped ones. You have the swastika, which is a cross, and so it really depends. The shape depended, of course, on who commissioned it, who was going to build it, how much money they had, and how far down the water table was. Also, the kind of soil that you were building in. If it was very fine soil, then of course you had to go all the way down, just a round shaft, and go all the way down, and just buttress it as best as you could. If the rock, it was very rocky, then perhaps you could do more things with it, rectangular or L shape and so on. And some of these deepest one, we're going to look at Chand Bauri, which is in Abaneri soon, and we're going to look at some of these some of the more intimate ones as well. Of course, what was the primary purpose of these step wells? Of course, the main thing was for water access, and water access for drinking water, for irrigation and agriculture. It was also water reservoir. Many of these were, particularly the kunds, the open ones, the open tank ones were attached to temples and shrines for worship and for bathing, ablutions, and so on. Some of them were cool retreats, particularly when the Islamic rulers came to India. They wanted, of course, it got very hot, and they wanted to go further down into the earth, and they built these retreats for themselves. A layover. So, who was laying over here? Well, well, they were transit points, just like you and I transit through airports, and we go and perhaps get a transit hotel. These were actually hotels, and they were for the traders who would come and transit, on their way with their livestock. So they were actually, places where they and these traders paid taxes to the monarchy of that area. Of course, there's beautiful gardens around some of these, watering of livestock, temples, and worship. So these are some of the purposes of stepwells. And the architecture, Nanda is actually just the one entrance, Bhadra is two entrances, Jaya is three entrances, and Vijaya are four entrances. So, for example, the swastik, which would be a cross like that, would have four entrances. All right, so this is a broad classification of stepwells. Now, I'm going to take you into the three types of stepwells and these are nowhere near as grand as Rani Ki Vav, but they're very special, and these are the ones that we're going to access during the tour. This is in Dank. So this was built 6th to 7th century, and it's called Manjushri. Now, this is what it looked like when Victoria Lotman, who's a journalist, and she's written the book Vanishing Stepwells. When she first went and she discovered this, she and Nirav Bhai discovered this stepwell. This is what it looked like. It was, still like it was just a rubbish dump. And then, Nirav Bhai took it upon himself to engage the local community uh, to talk to them and say, look, this is part of your heritage. Let's clean this up. They trucked all this rubbish out. And this shows our group. Some of you who are already here on this talk will recognize this photograph. Us descending into this stepwell, the very first international visitors to come to the stepwell. You see some of the villagers up there kind of very bemused about how excited we are to go down there. And these are some of the deities. This is a fertility symbol. This is Parvati apparently menstruating, and so the stepwells also had. They had a connection to fertility, to divinity, and women would come there and pray. They would go down and get the water. They would haul it up, but then also they used it as a place to pray and to meet. Here you see the Ganesh, so it's Parvati there. So this is Manjushri. That, of course, the main purpose of this stepwell was to access water. Now, just not very far from here, but just to give you an idea of how many there are and how different they could be. So here you see this one is called Vairi. This one here, and here you can see it's quite lush. And this stepwell was used for irrigation, mostly for irrigation. There was very little kind of devotion or temples or deities or anything like that. It was just irrigation. And then we went to one called Jilani, which was very difficult to find, just completely off road, down very bumpy roads, and passing cattle and so on. And then we come across this Kimji Kaka, who was just this lonely cowherd, and he takes us to this step well called Jilani, where he still accesses water for his own needs. He still drinks from it every day, and he's in his 80s. So I think you can tell that this groundwater is still quite good to drink. um, I wanted to bring this in. So when I mentioned it's either a vav, V-A-V, or it's a kund. Now here you see this is a very good example of a kund. So it's like a tank, it's a water reservoir. And here you see that there are these shrines, and this one has 4 shrines on each corner. It's rectilinear. And basically the water is accessed through these steps going all the way down. There's little shrines all over. This place also had like a cenotaph, because it had cenotaphs for fallen warriors. This one is in Devara, and it's a 10th century stepwell. Here you can see now that they're actually using the water for piping out to the fields nearby. And during the summer months, it also becomes a community hub. People gather here and they're jumping off here, using that as a platform to jump into the cool water. So this is a what's called a kund, Kund. So it's slightly different from a step well, but we would see that as well. Now, one of my favorites was Madha Vav. So there's all these legends behind each step well. And here in Madha Vav, which is in Vadhavan in Surendranagar, it's a 13th century step well. And this is very special because you can see these pavilions here. There's 9 of these pavilions. It's a linear step well. So it's got the one entrance, and it's got 9 of these pavilions. Now, this would have been the primary purpose, would have been, of course, to access water, but it would have been a caravanserai. So what were these platforms for? Remember, I said when we looked at Rani Ki Vav, the first steps, that keep in mind that these platforms have another purpose besides buttressing. They were used for the merchants and the traveling tradespeople to actually sleep there. And deliberately, these ledges that you see down here, these little walkways, were kept very narrow, because when they were let in and they went to sleep here on these platforms, there was never any great. Gujarat was never known for great forts or a great defense culture like Rajasthan was. And so, of course, they didn't want thieves coming in and looting these traders who were sleeping here. And also, if they were sleeping here with the livestock and so on, they didn't want the livestock disappearing. So that's the reason for these stepwells being built that way. This one was particularly beautiful with these stone pavilions, with the finials at the top. And it just had, again, it had this whole this kind of surreal as you kept moving further in. And then I have to tell you that all the way on either side, there's India, there's the cacophony of India, rickshaws and horns blaring and all the noise and the dust and all of that. And then when you came down here, there was a hush. And this very lovely woman, she has taken it upon herself to go and clean out these stepwells every day. She spends about an hour cleaning out these stepwells, this particular stepwell. And she'll tend to deities like this. There's gold leaf on it and silver leaf, and people come and pray there. And it becomes a bit of a community hub, like it always has. This water was quite clean, I must say. And so now we come to some very grand ones. This is Rudabai Vav near Adalaj. and just outside of Ahmedabad. And so the legend here is that Rudabai was a very beautiful queen, and she started building this stepwell when this was in the 15th century. So Ahmedabad was established in 1411 by Shah Ahmed. And apparently, one of his sultans really coveted Rudabai and wanted to marry her. And she was building this stepwell in honor of her dead husband. And she said, well, let me just finish building this stepwell. Can you help me build it? And he said, yes. And then I will marry you. And when the stepwell was built, you can see some of these kind of starting to look more Islamic. Some of the architectural features are looking Islamic, and the iconography is more or less gone. Although there are still some Hindu features, you can see the elephant, the trunk going up and so on. But it's starting to look more and more kind of, the iconography is starting to get kind of more geometric. And so she had this built, and apparently the legend states that as soon as she had it built, she actually jumped off from one of these pavilions up here and committed suicide. So she's dead here, and here's a dalaj. This is the stepwell that she's given us. So we would go in. This is a stepwell that has two entrances, and it's just again like a wondrous a place, like a wonderland. You go in there and you're just like, wow, where do I look? Where do I, do I look here? Can I see this? Can I see that? And here are some details. So intricate carving, beautiful, beautiful. As you look up, you see the light kind of filtering. It's very mysterious and just very, very beautiful, very hushed as well. So it's yeah, so one of my favorites in Adalaj near Ahmedabad. Now here is the granddaddy of them all. This one is one of the largest and the biggest stepwells. You've seen this in a lot of photographs. You've seen this in movies. It's been featured in movies. It was constructed in 800 AD by King Chand, Raja Chand, and of course, again, for access of water. But by this time they were starting to kind of vie with each other and wanted to make bigger and better stepwells. And here, it's approximately 60 feet deep, and it's built on 13 levels. It's got 3,500 narrow steps over 13 levels. Now you can imagine if you're a water collector and you have to go down the steps all the way down and then haul the water all the way up. Well, you're not going to need a gym, I can tell you that, and probably don't need a knee replacement as well. So this is Chand Bauri in Avaneri, and if you ever, incredibly, this stepwell is just 15 minutes from the Jaipur Agra road, which a lot of people traverse quite frequently, and you don't even know that it's there. Many people just never heard of Avaneri. It's starting to get more and more recognized, starting get profiled more and more. But anyway, it's incredible that something like this exists and so few people actually visit this. So that's Chandbari. Now, um, this is something that is just opened. It's Dholavira in the Harappan site of the Indus Valley civilization. This is what that whole site now, they've been excavating it for a number of years. The scholars have been trying to decipher the script. This is a Bronze Age civilization contemporaneous to Mesopotamia, Sumeria, and Sumerian civilization, also to civilizations in China and so on. But this particular one is particularly is important for understanding water management. This is because one of the earliest, 4,500 years ago, this is the kind of step well that they were building, and incredibly, it's engineered. As you can see, this is masonry, it's blocks that they have cut. They had the means to cut blocks, and to probably didn't have any cement or mortar, but it's all kind of joined together. And this would have led down to the water. This is the South Reservoir. This is another photograph of how people would have accessed water. And of course, we know that eventually the Indus Valley civilization was lost because the water dried up in this area. And so this area became a desert, and eventually, this area. I mean, we know very little about the civilization. They're trying very hard to decipher the script, which has been almost impossible, but they are making headway, and this civilization is coming to light. So we are going to be amongst the first ones on this tour to go down this. There's a new road that has been built, and we're going to go and see the earliest water management system at Dolavira. Nirav has been several times apparently already, and he's actually even helped with some of the excavation. So this is one of the earliest stepwells. And just a little reminder: if you want to ask any questions, you can put them in chat. Shrikesh is monitoring the chat, so we can certainly take. I'll try and answer your questions, or at least get back to you if I can't answer them. So what is the relevance of stepwells today? Well, um, they must be relevant because India has issued its 100 rupee note with a depiction of Rani Ki Vav, the Queen Stepwell. And despite all the comings and goings of demonetizing and getting rid of the 200 rupee note and the 2000 whatever, this is the one note that they have kept all this time, and it's become the most popular note. So you can see that it is gaining in popularity. Stepwells are certainly starting to make people sit up and realize, particularly since India's water table has gone down substantially over the last 15 years. It's one of the countries that is most water stressed at the moment, and again there has been um, a great interest in reviving stepwells, which kind of fell into disuse and disrepair with the arrival of the British. They were not enamored of stepwells. They thought they were very unsanitary, and of course, with the advent of the electric pump, they began building electric pumps. And well, what woman wouldn't want to just pump water at the surface rather than go all the way, 3,500 steps down to pick water up? And so, not to blame them. And then what happened was with these stepwells was that they became rubbish dumps because initially you might be shocked, like how can people throw things, but try and keep in mind. I tried to understand where this was coming from, and rather than just throwing the rubbish out, rubbish collection in India, as many of you know, it's not a forte. Municipalities don't, periodically they'll come and just kind of bulldoze stuff out, but really people just throw it out and the cows come and get it and so on. So if there's this pit next door, like wherever you're living, there's a big pit, you're going to throw the rubbish in there. So a lot of them were like, um, quite disgusting, to be honest. And many of them they've started cleaning them up and so on. So what's going on right now? Let's have a look at that. So between 2007 and 2017, and even more now, since 2017, the groundwater decline in India has gone from 60% almost like 65, 70%. So the groundwater has declined, and it's very stressed. India water, as I said, was very stressed. So a lot of, like, a few governmental initiatives have come up. Rajasthan has set up a governmental initiative to reclaim stepwells. They're funding many stepwells to get reclaimed and cleaned up and so on. Delhi has targeted 15 stepwells in that area to get uh, to reclaim. And then the NGOs have stepped in a big way. We have the Society for Rural Development in Jaipur, and also the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, who they have reclaimed and restored some very beautiful stepwells. Particularly, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture has restored the one in Hyderabad, which is now making a lot of waves, stepwell news. And corporate, Turji Ka Jalra, which is this one that you see if you've been to Jodhpur. You'll see this stepwell, Turji Ka Jalra, is right next to a very beautiful boutique hotel called Ras, RAAS, and it was a stepwell that belonged to them, like on their property, but it was silted, like not silted over, but it was this stinking, pool of water and rubbish and so on. So, and obviously they didn't want the lovely rooms overlooking this or smell and so on. And so they took it upon themselves to cart out like something like 500 truckloads of rubbish from this stepwell, and they've reclaimed it and restored it. And up here now, it's become a hub for, it's become beautiful shops there, and people gathering in the summer months. People come and swim in here, and so it's become a meeting point. Of course, then you have the community involvement as well. Manjushri in Dank, as I said, that was cleaned up with the involvement of the community. Nearby personally took upon himself during the pandemic to go out there and involve the villagers and tell them about them. And EYHO also funded the cleaning of these stepwells at Tank, which are some of the earliest ones from the 6th century. So, so that, in a nutshell, is stepwells. We we can take a pause now. I'm going to go into a preview of the tour, and do stay with us, because I'll be telling you how we're going to access some of these stepwells, what we're going to see. And but if you, in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them up on chat. I see Sherry has put up the Vanishing Stepwells of India, which is this wonderful book here. I have it right here. Please do go out and look this book up, The Vanishing Stepwells of India, from Victoria Lautman. And it's got some beautiful, she's documented so many of these stepwells and lovely, good, really wonderful photographs. She's documented these in a chronological order. So, beautiful book, Vanishing Stepwells of India. And certainly a beacon. She's been a beacon. Her passion for stepwells. She also just fell into it, stepwells quite by chance. Didn't even know one existed. Went down one, and boom, that was it. She was smitten. So this often happens. So you come on this tour with a caveat. Okay, so be prepared to be completely enamored of stepwells, like a lot of people have. All right, so we'll just move on. So tour preview. This tour is taking place September 26th to October 21st of this year, and we're going to access Gujarat-Kutch, and the Rajasthan part is optional, is Jaipur, which is 21st to the 25th. Here you can see one of the textiles we're going to see. This is sacred cloth. This is called Mata Ni Pachedi. Mata is the mother goddess, as you can see, the one it's Durga here, seated on the lion. And all of these wonderful figures heralding her and celebrating her. And so this comes from a community called the Vagri. In the olden days, they were not allowed into the temple, into some of the temples, so they developed their own ways of worshiping, which was to make these enormous hand painted, hand kalamkari, natural dyed textiles, which then they hang, and it's for devotion. So we're going to see some of that. So this particular tour, it's been conceived, it's one tour, but it has the two spectacular hits. So it's got the textiles, and you can see the double ikat patan patola, and then here you see the stepwells. So it's like they go hand in hand. And the more you explore this region, the more you understand that this is a place where textiles are so important. And this is a place where stepwells were so important to feed into the trade, into everything, into daily life, and so on. So you cannot explore one without exploring the other. Okay, so that's the focus of this tour. So very quickly, this is where we're going to go. So we're going to start in Bhuj. For some of you who've been already registered, we're already half full on this tour. Good to know that there's so much interest. You would fly into Bombay, which is somewhere around there, and very well served by international flights. And then you would take a flight again, a non-stop flight to Bhuj, which is where we start the tour. And we're going to spend 3 nights in Bhuj exploring Bandhani, Ajrak, the LLDC, the Living Learning Design Center, museum, again a gem, a complete amazing, right in the middle of the desert, and Bujodi weaving and so on around here in Bhuj. We'll spend one night in Hodko, which is the salt desert. This is about as far as you can go before you hit the border with Pakistan. So this is, a lot of the Bani tribal people live there, and there's tribal embroidery. From there, we go to Dholavira. This is the road that's being built. It's fabulous. And this is where the Indus Valley site is, the oldest stepwell in Dholavira. And then from there, we come all the way down to Gondal, which is 3 nights we'll be spending in beautiful Gondal. Again, quite a surprise. And where we will see the stepwells of Dank. Those are the first engineered stepwells, 6th century, that we'll be accessing from around here. Then we'll go to Muli, which is a couple of nights in Muli, which is a center for Tangalia weaving and a couple of beautiful stepwells. There's also a lot of arts and crafts here, pottery and ironsmithing, actually bronze. It's called Kansa smithing. So you'll see that there. And then from there, we drive to Ahmedabad, and we have 5 nights in Ahmedabad. We never can get enough of Ahmedabad. It's just there's just so much to do there. Starting with the Gandhi Ashram, the Calico Museum, the UNESCO Old City Heritage Walk through there, and the Adalat Stepwell. That's the one that I mentioned earlier. Matani Pachedi. That's devotional textile that you just saw earlier. UNESCO Rani Ki Vav. Will access Patan and the double ikat weaving, and then come back to Ahmedabad, and the tour can end there if you like. But if you want to just carry on your love affair with textiles, then we have a flight to Jaipur, and in Jaipur we are going to have some more fun. So here, why go on this tour? So I'm biased. I'm Gujarati. I I think that this is one of the richest. Uh, how can I say it, culturally, historically, and as far as topography is concerned, it's one of the most beautiful, richest, all of the superlatives that I can think of places, and yet it's still incredibly relatively unexplored. So you see a lot of local tourists, but you'll see, compared to the Golden Triangle, Taj Mahal and Jaipur and Agra and all those places, you won't see that much, so many uh, international tourists. So it's relatively unexplored. Stunning diversity of artisanal skills. We see this old fellow here. These are all handmade pots, and he's hammering a pattern, as you can see. People will periodically, they'll have these to store water in their homes. These were pretty much similar to the pots that they had, hundreds of years ago. These women would be carrying these down those steps, uh, I don't know how they didn't get vertigo, but anyway, they would be carrying these pots down and filling them with water and bring them up. And to this day, people have these pots for storing water. And what he's doing here is he would heat them up again, and then he would put a pattern again on them. And many households have their own patterns, so you can actually even commission your own pattern if you wanted. So we're going to go and look at, like a stunning diversity of artisanal crafts and textiles and so on. The stepwells are just registering for on tourist radar. So sometimes you go into these stepwells and you'll be the only international visitors there. And it's a chance to see rural communities that have been relatively unchanged for centuries, the way they've been living for centuries. Now, this tour has been conceptualized by Aarti and me, and then Nirav, I stepped in halfway, and I've worked with Nirav for about over 10 years. I wouldn't go to Gujarat without him. He is beloved by many of our EYHO travelers, and he's a textile and stepwell expert. And I'm very sorry to say, I think he has just, either something's gone wrong. He has just not managed to join us today, but maybe we'll bring him back on at a time that's more suitable. So he and I guess combined, we have deep knowledge and a passion for this land. We can decipher stories, the language, societal context, in a way that I think if you haven't grown up in the culture, then there might be something lost. So that's my pitch. So this is why I think this tour would be the one that you should go on. Okay, so this is optional, the block printing in Jaipur. Now, block printing in Jaipur, why Jaipur? Because this area has a particular kind of water quality. It's hard water, and you need hard water that's full of minerals so that it sets the mordants and sets the dyes. And so this is the block printing capital of the world. And so a lot of different block printing styles have developed here. It's time to go and play and have fun. We're going to do textile. We're going to have hands-on workshops in natural dyeing. Here you can see some indigo dyeing, and resist, which is dabu, which is like you put a resist on and then you dye them in natural print. And then Sanganeri block print. This is Sanganeri block print that I'm working on. So we're going to go into the Museum of Block Prints and Stepwells. And then, of course, there's always sightseeing if you want. There's Amer Fort, City Palace, the observatory. These are all, the heavy hitters of Jaipur. Of course, markets, boutiques, dining in the Pink City. There's also the Jaipur Literary Festival. This is the city. We won't be seeing that in November. But at this time, in Gujarat and Rajasthan will be the time for the Navratri festival. So we will be it's this fabulous festival of folk dancing. So we'll be wherever we can, we're going to access the folk dance festival. Some of the accommodations that we stay at, people who have been with us on this tour before will recognize these. We do not go to big box places. We do not go to places that are chains because we find that they take away from your experience. We want that personal touch. We want them to spoil you and pamper you. So this is our place in our haunt in Ahmedabad, which is House of MG, House of Mangal Das Girdhar Das, and then this is where we stay in the desert out near Hodko. This is a palace in Vadwan that we stay in, and then in Jaipur we stay in a beautiful, beautiful little gem of a boutique. It's just got like 5 or 6 rooms, and it's consistently rated very, very highly. We love this place. So that's where we're staying. Okay, and I think I've rattled on for long enough. If you have any questions, please, as always, um, email me, and you can visit the website eyhotours.com. And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves. If you like to say a quick hello, and yeah, and then if you want, you can also start your videos. Yeah. So I'm going to stop this screen share. Lovely to see all the familiar faces. Hello, how are you? Any questions? And you can please put them in chat. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. We're doing very well for time. Good to see you all. Now I see Fran, and I know that Webb and Renee and a bunch of you are on this. Good to see you. I mean, what are your recollections from this tour? And we did this in 2022. Fran, can I put you on the spot there?
Yeah, for a minute.
Yeah.
You hit all the highlights, and it makes me want to take the tour all over again. It's got a little bit of variation from other places that we had also gone to, but I would say bravo. You're very faithful to everything that we've done. The Stepwells are really something else, and were really an eye-opener for me. And of course, the textile portion of the trip is equally fascinating. So it's continual learning and engagement. And so I'm very happy to see that you're offering this again. And it's great to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, Fran. And Renee's just joined. Webb is on it as well. I know that Christine is in Bolivia right now. But anyhow, there is a question. I think Teddy wanted to know what is the driving time between the places. So if I can go back I will go back to, let me just check this. Let's see now. Okay, so let's go back to our map, and I can talk about it there. So when you fly into Bhuj, this is about maybe a couple of hours to Hodko, and then this would be another maybe 3 hours to Dholavira. And of course, there like you've got like 3 nights in Bhuj, one night, and then another night in Dholavira. Then this one would be the long drive all the way to Gondal, which is about I think 6 to 7 hours. But we will be making stops all along the way, and stopping for even things like textiles and stepwells. So this is the big one. And then here we are. We're going to be here for 3 nights, and then Muli again for another 2 nights. Maybe not even a couple of 2 hours, maybe to Muli, 2 or 3 hours. And then this one from Muli to Ahmedabad is about 3 to 4 hours. Then we've got 5 nights around Ahmedabad, and this one to Patan is about a couple of hours to Patan, and then we've got the temple, Modera temple there in the Patan and so on. So that is the drive times between places. So not terrible. It's not like you're doing 7-hour drives every day, and this is a nice relaxed 16 days. I know people who do this with one night and 2 nights, and they're on the road every single day. But in this case, it's not. Yeah. So yeah, so that's what the driving times are. And the people who've been on this tour will tell you that we use this time on the buses very well. So we're always giving lectures on the buses, we're answering questions, and we love doing that. So Neera will launch into a lecture on the next Stepwell that you're going to see, and I will give you a lecture on Indian history or whatever, something that you've seen. So we're always using this time to the best tour. Oh, hi, hello, Webb. How are you? So good to see you. And yeah. So that's the tour. If you have any other questions, I will stop recording this now. So